Hey everybody, welcome to the update. You know, we talk an awful lot about safety and security, and it is no small task to maintain the safety of 23,000 students and 3,000 staff members. Today, our show is going to focus on a little bit of how we do that and why we do some things that we do. So stay tuned. We're joined on this segment by Callaway County School System Director of Safety and Operations, Ken Kesselring, and Newnan Police Sergeant Donnie Evans. Guys, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Let's talk about a topic that is forefront of our minds every single day, safety and security. Ken, tell them, how do we secure 23,000 of our closest friends?
Well, the first thing we do is lock doors. That has become the biggest, most important thing that we do in our school system. Teachers have to have their classroom doors locked, exterior doors locked. I mean, that's number one, is making sure that. Another thing we do that is very simple is ID badges, check people in and out of the front office. We have very secure entrances in our schools now. Everyone who comes into the building comes into a main entrance. They are then immediately sent to the front office, and they can't get past the front office in our schools. So therefore, we are able to check and identify people who come into our buildings.
Yeah, and what we're really talking about is we're talking about layers of security in a school similar to what you would see in an airport. And Donnie, I know we've talked before, or excuse me, Sergeant, I know we've talked before, you really look at security from the outside in.
Yes, actually we look at it from all aspects. We will kind of bounce off what the school system does as far as their entry protocols. We also will do our own assessments on the outside security to prevent anybody from coming in that's not supposed to be here on the campus.
Yeah, and elaborate on that a little bit. You know, one of the biggest things that I think our school resource officers do, one of the biggest services they provide is you're doing an environmental assessment every day. We're not just talking about safety and security of the campus. We're talking about things that are going on in the community that could impact operations at school. Elaborate on that.
We also monitor our police radio frequencies, not only ours, but also the sheriff's office, in case there is something in the neighborhoods that's going on that could potentially impact the school. Whether a car chase that ends up close by to a school or something to that aspect, and we coordinate with the principals of the school on what our next step is.
And Mr. Kesselring, we use what we refer to as a code system.
Right.
That, of course, Code Green is normal, but talk about some of our other codes and what they mean.
You know, and what's unique is with our secure door system, we actually are in what we call a code yellow, a soft code yellow most of the time. Classroom doors are locked, exterior doors are locked, students can move around in the building. And so we're in a code yellow, but a code yellow means keep teaching, doors are locked. We're gonna go about our normal procedures in the classroom. We're gonna limit outdoor activity, limit some movement in the building. That we have a code yellow. Then a code red, code red means something we've determined is going on that we need to be extra safe. We ask teachers to take students to a corner of the room, away from windows, away from doors, and we'll stop teaching, and we'll make sure that everyone is secure and safe in the classrooms when we have a code red.
So, Mr. Kesselring, let's talk a little bit about a code that people may hear about but not really know much about it, and that's Code Blue. What does that mean?
Code Blue is when there is a medical situation that we need to address with our medical professional at each school, the nurses, and we also have administration come to the scene. And so, you know, it's a little more common than people would think. You know, it might be as simple as an asthma attack. It could be something more involved, sometime with seizures. So we have Code Blues frequently, and staff members respond.
Yeah, and oftentimes we'll notify parents.
Right.
We won't tell them exactly what happened,
Right.
but we will let them know that there was a medical emergency on campus.
Right. You know, let them know that an ambulance was on the way during the day and everything was taken care of.
And you know, with 23,000 students and over 3,000 employees, that is a fairly common occurrence.
It is a lot more common than people realize, but you think about, you know, really, we're a very large town with that many people.
Yeah, yeah. So moving from, you know, how we classify safety in schools to how we hire the right people to make sure that our students and staff are safe. And Officer Evans, you guys, you don't just hire anybody to be an SRO, do you?
No, they have to go through a process through the police department. We have our own protocols set up for who we want in our program. We want them to have the ability to have that good rapport with the kids, the staff, the parents, the community. We also want them to be able to think fast on their feet and also to be able to handle any situation that may come up.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I really appreciate about how you guys go about doing that, the vast majority of people that are hired as school resource officers are veteran police officers who have years of experience in other divisions. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we have officers that have experience in anything from years of service on patrol, criminal investigations, narcotics, supervisory positions in the past that they just wanted a change of pace or a change of environment. And they enjoy working with the kids, so this is a good unit for that. With all the experience that they bring to the table to our unit, it really benefits the school system and the students and the staff.
Yeah, the last piece I want you to hit on before we move to the next segment is our police departments, both the sheriff and the city of Newnan, do a lot of training in our facilities to get familiar with our facilities.
Yeah, it benefits everyone when we are able to train in the schools. In case there is an emergency in that school, those officers are familiar with what the layout of that school looks like.
Yeah, and I think that's a good place for us to end this segment. You know, safety and security, it doesn't happen by accident. We say all the time it's a top priority, but we put actions behind that. And we do that by being diligent about training, making sure that emergency services and law enforcement are familiar with our facilities, but we also do that all the way to who we hire or who you hire. I say we, that's how collaborative our relationship is, but all the way out to who we hire to put into these positions that are hot commodities, but they're also very precious positions.
Yeah, it's a job that you really need to make sure that you pay attention on who you're putting in those positions. You may have an officer that works better in an elementary school versus a high school, so you kind of get to know that officer, and we may from time to time move an officer from one school to another to help not just us but the system and the students. And we've had a really good outcome by doing that practice.
Definitely, and you know, I tell people all the time, typically the last thing I think about before I go to sleep at night, safety. First thing I think about when I wake up is safety. It's that important. I know you guys are the same way, and just want to tell you while you're here with me, I appreciate everything that you do to keep our students and our staff safe. Keep up the good work, and we'll keep getting better at it. So thank you guys for being here. We'll be back in just a minute. All right, we're back, and I'm joined now in a remote location that sounded kind of cryptic, but in a remote location by three of our principals, and we want to make the shift here from, we've talked about global safety and security from a system perspective and a law enforcement perspective, and now I want to get into a little bit of what happens when incidents occur at school. So we've got Dr. Chase Puckett, principal at Newnan High with us, Jillian Andrew, who is the principal at Brooks Elementary, and then Jamal Kemp, who is the principal at Lee Middle School. So welcome, everybody. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
I think you're somewhere close by, but I'm not really sure. So it's great to have you here. Dr. Puckett, if you don't mind, you've been in a very interesting situation, to say the least, the last couple of years. If you don't mind, talk a little bit about what goes through the mind of a principal when you get, say, a threat to your campus.
We review all types of experiences that happen throughout our system and throughout our country, but when an incident's brought to our attention, the first thing we have to do is determine at what level do we need to take this. It's not unusual for students, staff, or parents to bring a concern to us, but the first thing all of our administrators know to do is don't make a decision hastily, but don't make it in isolation. So we immediately bring our crisis team around, and so that's usually made up of administrators. It could also include counselors, instructional coaches, and our SROs. And we look at the incident to determine, is this an issue that I need to address immediately? Do I need to make a decision immediately, or do I have time to gather additional information? So the very first thing is pull your team together, look at the situation, and determine the facts. We've had all across our nation, Coweta County is not immune, but all across our nation, schools are having to respond to threats that require a team effort and very quick responses, but you have to do it in a way that doesn't disrupt the learning environment.
And I think you just hit on something, trying to do so in a way that doesn't disrupt the learning environment. You also don't do that in isolation. And in a day and age where information flows so quickly and freely, that can be a challenge, can't it?
Absolutely, and one of the things we discussed with our parents at our parent nights is our first priority is not communication. Our first priority is the safety of staff and students. But as soon as we have that in place, the next priority is communication, because what we know, we live in a day and age where misinformation spreads very quickly, and we want to make sure parents know we have nothing to hide, we're being transparent, and we all partner together. But yes, the important thing for us, safety first, and then right behind that, communicate with parents, staff, and students.
Awesome, thanks for that. And Dr. Kemp, if you don't mind elaborating on that a little bit, oftentimes we're working with law enforcement when these situations come up. Talk to me about how you navigate through that. Where does it begin and where does it end?
Dr. Horton, I think it all begins on just having those table talk drills. We bring in our SRO to join us on those drills, and we just bounce information off each other. We talk about different scenarios, different situations, and how we will handle them as a crisis team. So that makes, so when things do come up and things happen, we're ready to address those situations when they come up.
And those relationships you just talked about with law enforcement, they've been cultivated for years, right?
Absolutely, that's correct.
Awesome. And then when you do have an active situation, walk me through what are your priorities? I would imagine that the first thing you have to do, like Dr. Puckett said, make sure everybody's safe and accounted for, and then you've got to have order while you work through whatever the situation is.
That's correct. So the first thing we do, we bring in our crisis team. And like I said, we've already prepared for a situation, so we don't spend a lot of time on trying to figure out who's going to do what in this situation, but we have to figure out if the situation is actually credible or not. And then once we do, everybody has a part in the whole plan, and we go and handle the situation. So, and what we do is, just for example, we had a situation, Lee Middle School, at the end of the day, 3:20. And we got a call from the local law enforcement that there was a potential threat to the school. And so we got our team together, and it was all about timing, being able to make sure the kids are calm and safe and everyone is in their place. And we let law enforcement do their part as far as their investigation. But our main goal is keeping order in the school and keeping our kids and teachers safe while they do their part. And the parents, we understand that the kids are, they're scared, they're nervous. They may text their parents. Parents are calling the school. So it's very important to, we don't have time to send out the letters at that point in time, but the remind, the text messages, that's a quick way just to give the parents, hey, we're in code yellow, more information will come, just to keep everyone calm while law enforcement do their part.
And you said something that I want us to emphasize. You said that this particular situation, the report came from law enforcement. So not only are we scanning the environment for potential issues, but there are also outside agencies that are looking out for us and for the operations of a school.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's again just a sign of that collaboration that we have with our law enforcement partners. Dr. Andrew, let's shift a little bit to the medical side. And you know, we mentioned in an earlier segment that there are many medical situations that we run across. I know you've had your share at Brooks. Talk about the need to focus on responding to it properly, but also there's a big privacy aspect there that we're dealing with.
Yes. So you talked about drills, and they've talked about tabletop scenarios. We do regular Code Blue drills along with our emergency crisis teams. We have a Code Blue team who practice what to do in the event of a medical emergency. Our school nurse kind of leads that and guides us through to make sure we're making those correct and sound decisions. And then it is very important to respect the dignity of the student who may be having, or the teacher who may be having the medical emergency. So in those cases, we don't always release to parents or to families all of the details. It might be that we had a Code Blue, but not the specifics of it. It's in all of our nature to wonder and want to pray for and think of, worry about and hope for the best for someone who has had a medical emergency. But sometimes the best thing we can do is kind of take a step back and let the professionals do what they need to.
And you mentioned two things I want to talk more about. You mentioned our safety drills, which we do many of them monthly. There's actually a bill in the state legislature right now that is mandating that schools do safety drills. That's a practice that we've had in Coweta for years, as long as I can remember.
Same, yeah. We do fire drills once a month, Code Yellow drills, Code Red drills, we Code Blue drills. So all schools, not just Brooks, but all schools in Coweta County are preparing for needing to step in to assist in other ways besides just medical.
And I think the takeaway there is we go a long way to prepare for whatever scenario may pop up, and that's very intentional. And we've been doing that for years. And the other thing that you referenced that I want you to talk a little bit more about, it's all part of a broader safety plan. Every school in our district and our district as a whole has a safety plan that covers everything.
Goodness sakes, I think we even have a section on hurricanes
We do.
in ours. So we develop those and we look through it with a fine-tooth comb each summer just to make sure the right personnel are in the right positions. We have people assigned to be timekeepers in some instances. We know who's going to call 911. A lot of times that is our SRO because they have that direct line. We know who's going to take notes about what's going on during the event. So it's a pretty thorough plan that's laid out for all kinds of emergencies.
Thank you. And Dr. Puckett, I want to go back to you for one thing. We talked earlier about threats to schools and threat assessment. I want you to talk about the fact that yes, we get these, and many of them don't pan out to be anything. Do you take every one of them seriously?
I appreciate the question. There's often a lot of discussion around school safety, and I will tell you, all of our schools in Coweta County, we take every threat seriously. But thankfully, the majority of the threats that come our way tend to turn out to be hoaxes or a much smaller issue. But we do, from time to time, have graffiti we'll find on a wall or a threat that comes in through electronic means, social media, or a phone system. And the vast majority of the time, unfortunately, it tends to be a student or former student, either who wants to get attention or wants to cause some type of disruption to the school day. And that, I think, is pervasive throughout our society right now. Oftentimes, we're aware of social media trends that students sometimes follow. But the very first thing we have to do is assume every threat might be sincere and respond accordingly. And we always try to look at means, method, timing, intent, where the message was found, what time of day, any specific threats in there, and how do we respond with it. And I will say that the majority of our students do the right thing the majority of the time, and our students are powerful sources of information because they are committed to helping us keep them safe. And when students do make bad choices, the consequences are severe, both from a legal perspective and a school system discipline perspective. But thankfully, the majority of the threats against schools are not credible, in my experience.
Well, thank you for that. And if there's one takeaway for this segment for our stakeholders that may be out there watching this show, I want you to know that we don't take anything for granted when it comes to school safety. We do not assume. We are very diligent about making sure when we say that safety is our top priority, we're very diligent about making sure that we act that out each and every day in each and every situation. So thank you all for your efforts in that area, and we'll be back here in just a minute. All right, welcome back everybody. And we've been talking about safety and security today, and my hope in this segment is that we're going to be able to answer the million-dollar question. And Mr. Kesselring, congratulations, you've been chosen to offer the answer to the million-dollar questions. How do we communicate with parents when it comes to safety?
We communicate in multiple ways with parents. Most parents have gotten the letter brought home by their child, but there's also, and it was mentioned earlier, remind text. We're going to communicate through that aspect. We're going to communicate through school website, district websites. I mean, there are so many ways that parents can find out what was going on that, we welcome parents asking us, how can they find out what's going on in school?
So there's tons of ways we do that. Social media, email, remind, letters, robocalls, all of those. So that's the how.
Right.
That's the how. So I want to go into studio and ask Dr. Andrew, why do we communicate with parents? Dr. Andrew, that's a loaded question for you over there, but why do we communicate with parents when it comes to safety?
Yeah, so we are blessed to have parents entrust us with their most precious thing in their world every single day. And as a Coweta County mama myself, it's important to me to know what goes on at school, number one, so I can have conversations with my child about some things that may have been happening. It helps to ease parents' concerns, but it also helps them ease their child's concerns if there were any. So I think it's super important to keep that connection so that they know that parents are a priority to us just like the students are.
Yeah, and you hit on it. I'm a parent as well of 2 students in our school system, and certainly I want to know when something's going on in our schools that could affect the learning environment. There's a little bit more to the why, Dr. Kemp, and typically we will communicate when we have threats to a school, weapons at a school, or a substantial disruption to a school. Can you talk a little bit about that being why we would communicate?
Yeah, just the importance of just safety and being transparent with all our stakeholders, letting them know, what's going on in the school, let them know we're investigating, and letting them know the outcome of the situation. Transparency is very important for our district. There's no secrets, we're not hiding anything, but we want to make sure our parents feel comfortable when trusting each and every school that know that we're gonna take care of their children from the start of school to the end of school. Like you said earlier, our number one priority is safety for staff and students. Get them to school safe and get them home safe. Those are our 2 number one priorities in Coweta County.
Absolutely, and I kind of laugh sometimes. We have, and you're 100% right, we've operated on this philosophy for as long as I can remember of transparency. If it happens in a school and it could affect things, we want you to know. And I always joke and say, it's the we report, you decide philosophy. And what I mean by that is if something's going on that could be a disruption, it could be threatening to a school, I feel that it's our responsibility to let parents know so that parents can make informed decisions. You agree?
Absolutely.
Dr. Puckett, when we communicate, there are some limitations though, especially when you're talking about issues of safety in a school, the first priority is to deal with the actual issue or concern, and then we look at communication after. Want to talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. We all know that parents will hear information that may not be accurate. They'll pick it up through social media or through their students texting them. And so when the situation allows, I think pretty much every principal tries to send out a remind text of some sort if we think it's something that parents may be hearing about, just because that simple text, we're looking into something, we're good, but we want you to be aware, that often will let our parents know, hey, it's not nearly what I'm imagining, because parents truly want to trust us to take care of their kids. That transparency helps. But oftentimes when we do have time, we will review the situation to determine, okay, here's the facts. What do I need to share with parents so they can make that informed decision? But also have to keep in mind, we're dealing with children most of the time. And if the possibility exists that a student may be involved in an investigation, we don't want to prejudge that student, but we also don't want to complicate our partners in law enforcement who are conducting an investigation. We tell parents all the time, we work with law enforcement. School will do our investigation, often parallel to law enforcement's investigation. And we'll work with our law enforcement experts. And before I put out a letter, I've had the director of safety look at it. I've had our communications director look at it. I've made sure our school resource officer has looked at it so that I share with parents the basic factual information that I know is correct, that they need to know to make that informed decision. But I also make sure I do my best to protect the integrity of the investigation and the privacy of all students, parents, and staff members involved.
And Dr. Puckett, that communication, you've talked about the initial communication, but oftentimes you do follow-up communication, especially once we've had resolution to an issue. Want to talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. One of the things that we've learned over time is that schools have a powerful responsibility to protect not only our kids and staff, but even our community. And by communicating back to our parents when something's resolved, it does two things. Number one, it assures them that we don't just brush tough situations under the rug. But number two, it helps communicate to children some of the consequences that occur when you make very poor decisions, but also that we value the input from parents, from stakeholders in the community, and children. They are some of our most powerful pieces in an investigation, and just simply following up lets them know we haven't forgotten that you are trusting us with your sacred children at our schools every day, whether it's on the bus, on campus, or on field trips. We're going to partner with parents.
And Sergeant Evans, close the loop for us. Most of the time, law enforcement is right there with us, especially if it involves something criminal in nature.
Yeah, and we have to work really closely with the principals and the school system, make sure that, we know that y'all want to get information out as fast as possible, but if it's a criminal investigation, it kind of slows it down a little bit, and we don't want to harm the investigation that either our SROs or our detectives are in the middle of at that time. But with that being said, we will communicate with y'all, work with y'all, and get that information released to the parents as soon as possible.
Yep. Well, thanks to all 5 of you. Thanks to you 2 that are here with me and the 3 that are somewhere. Thank you guys for all that you do to keep our kids safe. You do a wonderful job, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Folks, as you can see, we work really hard to try to keep your kids and our students safe. It is always at the forefront of our minds, and we're going to continue to work hard at it. I hope this has provided you with an idea of kind of the how we go about doing that and the why related to communication with you when we do have things that occur in our schools. If we can ever be of assistance to you, by all means, reach out to us, and just thank you for trusting us with your children each and every day. We do not take that lightly.